Good afternoon, Chaos. This is Akelatos, your friendly Legion's leader here. Ready to do another roster review, this time for Galiandes of Rise of Chaos. Gali was with Legions for a little bit, but had to cut back on commitment and playtime, so is now in Rise. He's asked me to do a little bit of review for his heroic Sith readiness. So I'm going to kind of jump in there and really focus on some teams that I think are most viable for you. Some teams that you could either use right away or use with a little bit of gear. I may have a few farming recommendations, but not too much because there's just so much to farm right now. I'll give you 3 different things that you could farm. But aside from that, if there's anything else you want, it's your account, you have fun, you play the way you want to. These are just my observations of what I think could help you most. So let's just start off by saying, I like your arena team. It's not meta. It's not very popular, but I like that combination. I would just try and find a tank maybe, but I don't know who you would take out to put a tank in, so stick with it. If it works for you, awesome. I'm a fan. I like it. So back with the Sith readiness. The first group everybody checks for Sith is Jedi Training Rey. And we see that you don't have her, but you do have R2-D2, Scavenger Ray, BB-8, and Resistance Troopers a little far away. But that's okay. So let's check and see if you will be ready to get them when they come. Now, I notice your Veteran Smuggler Chewie is 7-star gear 9, which is plenty. And your Smuggler Han is 4 stars gear 11. Now, I don't know if you'll have the time to get Smuggler Han up to 7 stars for this next go-around. You may have to wait a couple more months until she comes back around. I don't know how many crystals you have access to. I don't know if you're going to buy the pack that comes out for Smuggler Han. If you do, awesome. But the free-to-play way, I don't see a way for you to get enough Veteran Han shards to get Jedi Training Rey. But if you decide to go to pay-to-play route and you want to get her, you're definitely going to want to get Resistance Trooper back or up to 7 stars as well. And actually your Finn needs to be 7 stars to get Jedi Training Rey. So there's a few recommendations right there. Resistance Trooper, I don't remember where he is. I want to say he's in the guild store. And might have a hard node. But you're definitely going to want to get him up eventually if you're going to use Jedi Training Rey. Now, for teams that I think you have that could be used right away. The first one that I saw is First Order. Obviously, your Kylo Ren and Kylo Ren Unmasked stand out. They're pretty cool. They're very, very useful. And you could run a First Order team with Kylo Ren Unmasked if you got the Zeta on his lead. And use him along with Kylo Ren, First Order TIE Pilot, First Order Officer, and First Order Stormtrooper. Phasma is nice for kind of turn meter gain, but Kylo Ren actually provides, I think, close to the same amount of turn meter gain that he doesn't provide advantage. However, he does ton more damage than Phasma does. But if you're farming First Order Special Forces TIE Pilot out of the guild store, Special Forces TIE Pilot will replace Kylo Ren eventually. Because First Order TIE Pilot does provide speed up and calls assists and does fairly decent damage. So the First Order Special Forces TIE Fighter Pilot will replace Kylo Ren when you get him 7-star. Your First Order TIE Pilot is going to be a ton of damage. However, he dies very quickly. So if you really want to run First Order and get the best First Order team you can have, the First Order Executioner is going to replace TIE Pilot. Now, as far as mods go with that group, you're going to want First Order Officer as fast as possible, like lightning speed, because the officer reduces enemy turn meter, provides advantage to your guys, reduces cooldowns, and TM swaps with somebody. Well, not TM swap the same way that Grand Moff Tarkin does, but he provides 100% turn meter to one person. So definitely want to get him super fast. Kylo Ren Unmasked, I'm thinking you want to get high health because Scarred allows him to... Scarred, whenever he takes damage, he recovers 8% health, so he really needs high health with some offense-type secondaries so that your Focused Rage can regen a lot of health. So that's what you kind of want to get for Kylo Ren. First Order TIE Pilot, crit damage, crit chance. Kylo Ren, crit damage, crit chance with protection secondaries. And that's the way you would use your First Order. You also have a Sith/Empire team that's pretty close to ready to go. And that is under an Emperor Palpatine lead. And you could run Emperor Palpatine with Darth Vader, Grand Moff Tarkin. And right now, you would have to use Stormtrooper as your tank because he's better than Royal Guard, I think. And Shore Trooper is only 5 stars. So if you get Shore Trooper 7-star, he could absolutely replace Stormtrooper. But don't worry about gearing up Storm because even if Shore Trooper replaces Stormtrooper in this group, you can use Stormtrooper in another group, no problem. And the 5th person in that group would be a Sith. So let's go down to your Sith and see what you've got. I would recommend, if you're close to 7 stars, Darth Nihilus to go in that group. Because with Emperor Palpatine and Darth Vader, there will be a lot of debuffs floating around on the ads in Phase 2. And Darth Nihilus can really get his Drain Force going to get to a Nihilus super quick. If your Darth Nihilus is not close to ready, or you won't get him in time, you start working Heroic Sith, then Savage Opress or Count Dooku, both are decent options. Now notice I didn't say Darth Maul, because Darth Maul dies way too fast. He has a super low health pool, he's super slow, he has very little potency, so his daze doesn't really do a whole lot. He's just not a very strong character, and I think of all the Sith, he's probably the weakest. And Darth Sidious is best if you give him a Zeta and put him under a Darth Vader lead, which I don't think would work best for you given the group that you have available. So that's why I say don't worry about Darth Sidious right now. Now there's another group kind of on the opposite of the Empire, some Rebels and Jedi that you could use also in Phase 2. And this is kind of a modified, what we call the Machine Gun Leia group. Now you're going to run a lead of Admiral Akbar with this group once you get him to 7 stars. He's farmed out of the arena store, so he's really not going to compete with any other characters that you're farming. So you'd have an Admiral Akbar lead with Princess Leia, who you would get geared as much as possible. Ooh, excuse me. And the 2 Jedi that would go with this group are General Kenobi, who needs some gear, and Barriss Offee, who you could throw a Zeta on to make this team much more effective. Now, the typical 5th person in this group is Grand Admiral Thrawn. But I notice your Thrawn is only 6-star. So if you can't get Thrawn to 7-star by the time you're starting your Heroic Sith, you could use somebody from Phoenix Squad, and that is Sabine Wren. Sabine's Darksaber Strike works really well and has a great synergy with Princess Leia because Princess Leia already has high armor penetration, but if you provide a defense down with Sabine, your Leia would be doing even more damage. Okay, so those are 3 Phase 2 teams that I think you've got working that could do decent. The First Order under Kylo Ren Unmasked, Empire and Sith under Emperor Palpatine, and the Machine Gun Leia group with an Admiral Akbar lead. Now moving on to Phase 3, you have the most effective group practically ready to go. And that group is a Commander Luke Skywalker lead with a Zeta Han Solo, who, to be the best, you really could get him up to Gear 12. And along with these two, you're going to run another Rebel, POW, just get him up to level 85, maybe to Gear 7 or 8, and that's all you need. The ideal setup with this group would use Chirrut Imwe for his tenacity up, but since yours is only 5-star, you could continue to farm him out of the fleet store and get him to 7 stars. But if you don't get him up in time, you could use the clone trooper Captain Rex. Now, Captain Rex provides the same tenacity up that you would need on Raid Han. And you really wouldn't need him very high gear either. This Chex Mix, as it's called, group doesn't rely on high gear on the other guys. But if they do have higher gear, they are going to help Raid Han just a little bit more. So take that as you will. I think I would gear the other guys first. And then if you find you don't have any more viable teams yet, you can start gearing up those guys. Now, the second most effective team in the Phase 3 would use a Rebel, and the Rebel will be Rebel Officer Leia Organa, whom you have a Zeta on. So she could do a ton of damage for you. The way the Rebel Officer Leia group works is that after your Chex Mix run, you leave just one saber. And then you use a group to take out that saber, and then pop standalone for Rebel Officer Leia, use her special, and get 400,000 damage right away. It's super effective, and it only takes a few seconds, and doesn't really require a ton of restarts. The best thing to do with her is to get your 4 highest damage, or on the character sheet, the 4 highest damage attackers. For you, that would probably include Boba Fett, Scavenger Rey, Darth Maul, and then Jedi Knight Anakin. Now, the other reason Jedi Knight Anakin is here is if you can use his special and it crits, and you get offense up on Rebel Officer Leia, you're increasing her damage by 50%. So, you definitely... that would be the only thing that requires you to restart this group, is to restart until your Jedi Knight Anakin can proc offense up on your Rebel Officer Leia Organa. You get that going, you'll have a ton of damage in Phase 3. So with no more gear, you could probably hit close to 2.5 million damage in Phase 3. So, well, maybe 2 million because your Han Solo needs a little bit of gear. But for Phases 2 and 3, those are the teams that I think you have that would work very well. Now, in Phase 4, you kind of got to wait for somebody or the rest of your guild to take out Darth Nihilus. But then when that's done, you have basically the rest of your roster you can throw together. I didn't put everybody in teams, but what I think your most effective team in Phase 4, particularly against Traya, would be a Rebel group with Wedge Antilles and Biggs Darklighter. Okay, you would use Wedge and Biggs, and you've already got them very high gear. I would use your Captain Han Solo here as well, just because of his heals and even his ability to revive. Maybe it could help. Your R2-D2 hasn't been used yet, so you could definitely use him in this lineup. And for right now, you could probably use Lando Calrissian as the 5th, or you could gear up your Stormtrooper Han and give them a little bit of a tank that can feed them turn meter. So if you use Stormtrooper Han and use Captain Han to heal him up, you can get a lot of turn meter going for the rest of your group. So I think that team could be fairly effective against Traya in Phase 4. So there's a few teams that I think that you could really work on, and could definitely help get ready for Heroic Sith. Obviously, again, Phase 1 is kind of brutal without Jedi training Rey. And Phase 4 could use Night Sisters, which I think you said you were working on a bit, and they look nice. But if you want to use Night Sisters, you definitely want to get Talia up to 7 stars. And with what you've got, Nasaj Ventress Group, Mother Talzin, Night Sister Acolyte, Old Daka, and Talia are going to be your best setup. But this group does require 3 Zetas for you. And, you would want to gear up Acolyte and Daka. Talia doesn't need to be super high gear for them to be really effective, though all the gear helps. But this group could definitely work for you in Phase 4. Your Night Sister Zombie looks to be pretty far away, similar to mine. So, when you do get Zombie ready to go, she would replace Night Sister Acolyte in your group. So there you have it, Galiandes. You have a lot of potential, a few things to work on to round out a couple groups for you, but you're definitely on the right track and poised to do a lot of work for Rise of Chaos. I'm excited to see what Rise can do here in the next few weeks, maybe a month. And I'm sure in that time you could get a couple of these groups squared away, at least Gear 11. But if you're like me and a few others, don't stop at Gear 11. Just keep going to Gear 12 and get them all ready to go so you can just dominate that raid. So until next time, this is Hekalatos saying good luck and goodbye, Chaos.